Good afternoon. Good afternoon, friends. I am Dr. Anurag Joshi from the Faculty of Political Science, School of Social Sciences at IGNOU headquarters in New Delhi. I welcome you to this teleconferencing session. Prior to this, we had a session just now also relating to a political science topic, which was on the state today, covered by our discipline chairperson, Professor Pandav Naik, and a colleague from history faculty, Shri Ajay Mahorkar. In a way, you'll find that there is some linkage between that topic and the topic which is under discussion now, that is political traditions, Greek and Roman. Now, this is a part of a new elective course at the bachelor's degree level, that is EPS 11. You may recollect that the course title is Political Ideas and Ideologies, and those of you who are enrolled for this course would also be aware that it's a new course in place of the earlier course EPS 1, which was Introduction to Political Theory and Institutions. Now, the political traditions, it is specifically a part of block 2 of the present course, that is EPS 11. This is block number 2. I may mention that generally in colleges and universities in our country, you do not come across much material on political traditions. In fact, the concept itself is not paid much attention, and that was the reason why, since this being a new course, the faculty of political science thought that it would be a good idea to have a full-fledged block devoted to to political traditions. Now, the block specifically, those of you who have gone through it carefully, it has 5 units corresponding to the traditions dealt with. The introductory unit, which is unit number 6, is on Indian political traditions. Those of you who have been tuning into our teleconferencing sessions might recollect that the Indian political traditions have been covered in an earlier teleconferencing session. Then we have on the Confucian political tradition, the Arab Islamic, the Greek and the Roman, which is under consideration today, and last but not the least, the Western political tradition, where we study the different strands of liberalism and Marxism. Now, you may wonder as to why out of these 4 or 5 traditions that have been listed, I have chosen to focus on the Greek and the Roman. Well, one reason is simple enough. Some of the traditions, for instance, as I mentioned, the Indian political traditions have already been covered earlier. I was there once again. Now, the main reason behind covering or taking up this today is that the Greek and the political traditions basically are fundamental to the entire Western political thought, theorizing ideas and concepts that have come down to us till the present age. They are the bedrock on which much of political theorizing, political practices as we know today are based, and you can say they are the core. They are the source from which the majority of ideas of Western political thinkers and even those in the other streams such as sociology, etc., have come up, and this was the reason. Now, before I go into Greek and Roman aspects of political traditions as such, you should have some idea of what one means by political tradition. You can see for yourself that it is made up of two words, political and tradition. Both the words or terms individually you all understand. If I translate in Hindi, you'll understand it better. Political tradition would be what we call Rajnitik Parampara. Parampara, or tradition, is something which is handed down to us from generation to generation, going back in time. So when one talks of parampara of Rajniti or tradition of politics, basically we have in mind certain basic core ideas which, on the basis of which a lot of other concrete concepts and theories have come up. For just to give an example, you'll understand, if one talks of the Indian political tradition, then you pay a lot of attention to ideas of, say, danda and dharma. That is, dharma is what is righteous, it is a code of conduct, and dand is a punishment to the concept of danda. So political tradition is basically, you can say, the values of politics, certain basic core ideas which are there, and on the basis of which more elaborate concepts, theories have been formulated. Now, coming to this topic as such, those of you who have also been students of history or otherwise even at the school level, you must have read that the ancient Greece and Roman civilizations, they had a lot to contribute to the world in terms of ideas of ideas of politics, in terms of philosophy, in terms of ideas of ethics, etc. And that is why, as I said at the very beginning, the Greek and the political traditions are the bedrock on which much of Western theorizing has taken place. Now, to start with the Greek traditions, first, the Greeks, as also the Romans, as you will see, concentrated a great deal on the ideas and concepts of the state, citizenship, what is a good life, etc., etc. In fact, the word politics, some of you might recollect, the word politics itself comes from the Greek word polis, which is Greek for the city-state. So, when one is, as I said, the Greeks devoted a good deal of their intellectual energies to a discussion of the concept of state, and when we talk of the ancient Greece, we talk of city-state. Now, you may wonder why city-state. The reason is simple. The states at that time which existed in Greece, they were not very big territorial units. They were not much larger than one would say the size of a middle level town in India today. For instance, the two most well-known city-states in Greece, Athens and Sparta. Athens was about 1000 square miles, and Sparta was about 3300 square miles. Therefore, this is the reason when one is talking of ancient Greece, instead of using the term state, which is well known, we use the term city-state. And I have already told you, the Greek for city-state, which is polis, that is the term from which the term politics has come. So this you may keep in mind. Now, the nature of the city-state, I have already mentioned that the city-state was not a very big territorial unit. It was small in size. It was enclosed by other features such as mountains. There was a huge wall which sort of enclosed the state, and the two, apart from Athens and Sparta, there were other city-states also, but these two are the most well known. Of course, Athens is known more for its ideas of democracy and freedom, while Sparta is known for its ideas of sacrifice and discipline. In fact, I may mention, you may be knowing that the English adjective Spartan, it traces its origin to the ancient Greek city-state of Sparta, which means Spartan, you know, means to be frugal, to be disciplined. So the origin is traced back to the ancient Greek state of Sparta, where a lot of emphasis was laid on being self-disciplined, being frugal in one's habits, so on and so forth. Now, the Greek concept of state, basically they had two ideas which ran parallel. One view that the ancient Greeks had was that the state was a natural institution, that is, it was not something which was created by some outside agencies or outside forces. It evolved naturally over a period of time. The other view of the state is that is, the state was a product of customs and traditions of the people. But whatever may be the view taken, as per the Greeks, the aim of the state was the cultivation of the good life. The state was a means to achieving a good life. Good life meant a life lived on the basis of reason, which was further in accordance with the law of nature. And the Greeks also held the state to be a necessary institution, in the sense that the idea of good life, the idea of common good, it could not be achieved in the absence of the state. For instance, if one gives a comparison in the what is called, say, those of you who are students of political science or the social science disciplines, as per the Greek view, the common good of the people, the good life, it cannot be attained in the state of nature. That is the opposite of something organized, which is the state. The state, you have other organized structures also, such as the village and the family, but then the state is the highest of all these structures or associations. So since to the Greeks the idea of state was there for pursuance of the idea of the common good or the good life, so we can also say that for the Greeks the state was a moral unit. These are basically the, and it will come to you later, but I may mention here, we all talk of democracy. Now, many of you may not be knowing that the word democracy also comes from the Greek word demo, which means free. So since we are talking of traditions, so the democracy is also a contribution of Greeks to political discourse. Now, the Greek concept of citizenship, the ancient state of Greece, it was basically divided into three classes, that is the citizens, the foreigners and the slaves. Now, among these three categories, the full rights, political, social, economic, were enjoyed by those who were citizens, that is citizens by birth of both the parents and 18 years of age. The foreigners comparatively had lesser rights, and the slaves virtually had no rights. And I may also mention here, which is cited as criticism of the ancient Greek civilization, in the category of citizens, again, one half of the population, that is the women, they were not really having rights to the same degree or extent that the free Greek men were having. So one may keep this in mind. It is cited as an one can say, when you are critiquing the contributions of the ancient Greeks, this point often comes up for discussion. Now, talking of traditions, the Greeks are also known for their contribution vis-a-vis the concept of the constitution. Now you all are very much familiar with the word or the term constitution. You have the Indian constitution, you have the constitution of the United States of America, you know about the written and the unwritten constitutions. For instance, the Indian constitution is a written one, the constitution of the United Kingdom, UK is an unwritten one. Now the Greek contribution, the Greek tradition, it lies in the fact that the Greeks were the first in the world to develop the concept of constitution. And the mention may especially made of the two great and well-known Greek political theorists, that is Plato and Aristotle. Both of these devoted a great deal of their time and energy to a study of constitutions. Now, for instance, if one takes Aristotle, whose most famous work is Politics, Aristotle studied as many as 158 constitutions, or one can say documents which were there in ancient Greece at that time, and on the basis of his study, he gave his idea of what should be an ideal state. Now Plato, whose most famous work is Republic, his approach was a bit different. He first dealt on what should be an ideal state or constitution, and then he got into deviations, that is those forms of the constitution which had deviated from the normal. For instance, the most normal or the best he called the ideal state, and then the deviations were he calls for, there were four forms. One was democracy, for example, other was oligarchy, democracy and tyranny. So what he did was, he first deliberated upon what should be an ideal and then concentrated on the deviations. Now Aristotle, whose most famous work I have mentioned is Politics, he deviated. He first studied the actually existing conditions of the different types of the states and the constitutions that were there, and then gave an ideal type. So this is the difference between the two. And I may also mention that for both Plato and Aristotle, they are great, while elaborating upon the idea of the constitution, they paid a great deal of attention to how the offices were arranged. The arrangement of offices, by offices one means here public offices, the manner in which these public offices were arranged led to the type of the state or the government that could be there, and depending on this arrangement one could have, say, monarchy, aristocracy and polity, and its deviant forms, that is tyranny, oligarchy and democracy. So when we are talking of traditions of political traditions in Greece, I have told you about the idea of the state, the idea of citizenship, then the types of constitution. Then I have already mentioned this. I may mention again that among the Greek city-states, Athens and Sparta, and even between these two, Athens was the most famous, basically because it is here where democracy, direct democracy as we know existed. It is generally taken to be the first location in the world, though in the context of India also one talks of, say, Janpadas and all, but in popular imagination the direct democracy that existed in the ancient Greek city-state of Athens is taken as the first example of democracy as it has come down to us. It was, of course, direct democracy in the sense that all the citizens took part in the affairs of the state, And as I've told you, this was possible, this direct democracy was possible because the size of the state was small. Democracy as you know it today in India, United Kingdom, USA, France and elsewhere, it is what we call indirect democracy, in the sense that we elect representatives. In democracy that existed in ancient Athens, all, you have emphasis, I am emphasizing the adjective all took part, and this was possible, I'll repeat, because the population was not much. As you know now, it's not possible, the states are very big, and so we have instead of direct democracy we have indirect democracy. Now one important point I may mention here, which can also be taken as one can say a contribution of the Greeks, was that in the direct democracy that was practiced in ancient Athens, for instance, the voting was not by ballots, like when you have voting in India or United Kingdom. The voting takes place through secret balloting. In ancient Greece, in Athens for instance, voting was by drawing of lots. The idea was that by drawing of lots, everybody's chances were equalized, and strictly it is frankly a more democratic way. But as I said before, all this was possible because the population size was not much. Now you cannot do this in the present times that we are living, since the populations run into crores. So, but this point you can remember. Now, another one can say contribution of the ancient Greeks, especially Aristotle, was that he devoted a considerable amount of his time and energy to a deliberation over causes of revolutions. I mean, why do revolutions break out? It is not that revolutions break out everywhere and anywhere in the world, or they break out suddenly. So, he gave a general as well as specific causes. Now, in the scope of this session, we cannot go into details of all this, but what you can notice or remember is that one of the most general causes of revolution is when a large mass of people or citizens, for a sustained period of time, they have a sense of grievance or injustice, and this is the genesis of revolution. I mean, you know that later on in history we had the French Revolution, say in 1789, which is very famous. You had the Bolshevik revolution in erstwhile Soviet Union in 1917. These are all down the edges, but even when you consider these later age revolutions, you will find that the basic cause was the same, that is a tiny section of the people, that is the aristocracy, the monarch, the oligarchy. They were having a lifestyle, a standard of living which was vastly different from, markedly different from the living standards enjoyed by the majority of people who were living ordinary lives in poverty, etc. So now it may strike you that Aristotle, who was there in before Christ, he could at that time itself point out that one of the most significant causes of revolution is a feeling of injustice seeping in a vast majority of citizens. So I have told you about the Greek concept of state, city-state, as we mentioned. I've told you that the word politics comes from the Greek word for state, which is polis. I told you that the Greeks believed that the state, there were two views: the state was natural as well as it was a product of customs and traditions. I have told you something about the ancient Greek study of the constitutions, the division of society into in ancient Greece, that is citizens, foreigners and slaves. I have told you about the direct democracy in ancient Athens and the causes of revolution. Now, since we have to go to the Roman traditions also, what can one say about, say, the achievements and failures of the Greek political traditions? Now, as I told you, one of the most significant contributions is that the Greeks were the first to give the concept of the constitution. Then the Greeks were the first to develop, in fact, a science of politics. Before Greeks, it is not that there were no thinkers before Greeks, but the thinkers before the Grecian thinkers such as Socrates, Plato and Aristotle, their ideas and views were, you can say, highly, metaphysical, not tangible. the ideas were not concretized. The contribution of Greeks lies in that they were first to develop a science of politics. In fact, the term political science, Aristotle is credited with it. He called it a master science. That is the discipline or a science from which all other disciplines would flow. So they were the first to develop the idea of the constitution. They were the first to give a science of politics as it has come down to us. Now, then of course, as I mentioned, democracy as you know it today in India and elsewhere, this is again a contribution of the Greeks, and I have mentioned that the term democracy itself comes from the Greek word demo, which means to be free. Now, if we talk of the failures, one of the failures cited against their name is that though they dealt at length on the idea of what should be the good life, they emphasized that the state is a means to achievement of the common good, they deliberated on the idea of citizenship, but in their own society, as I have told you, there were three classes: citizens, foreigners and slaves. Citizens, that is citizens by birth and of both the parents. Now, the criticism is that is less than one half of the population were having all the rights. The others, the foreigners and the slaves, were not really having rights or significant rights. Slaves, in fact, did not have any rights at all. The foreigners had, but not as in the same degree and of the same type that were enjoyed by the citizens. Then another critique given is that the Greeks often did not clearly distinguish between state and society, which created the problem of balancing individual interests and the interest of the community or the society as such. Now, we have about 15 minutes with us. We can go on to the next part, that is the Roman traditions. I have already told you that ancient Greece and ancient Rome are civilizations are considered the bedrock of the present day Western civilization. Now, in terms of chronology, the Roman civilization succeeded the Greek civilization. And so, of course, in the ideas of the Romans, you can see some influence of the Greeks also. At the outset, I may mention that since we are talking of traditions, the most significant contribution of the Romans can be said to be the idea of a universal state for a universal community. Now, what this means is, you will understand if I compare it with Greece. I have told you that in ancient Greece, the state was the city-state. It was a very small territorial unit where the people were not too heterogeneous. I mean, there was, you can say, in terms of race, etc., origin, there were not too many variations. The Roman state, partly because of the fact it was a state in the sense that we know the state now, it was a very big territorial unit following the conquest engaged in by Roman emperors and generals. So when the state was very big, then you also needed a community of diverse races, cultures, but still drawn together. So the ancient Romans are credited largely with the idea of a universal state for a universal community. Now coming to their traditions, as I have already told you, since they succeeded the ancient Greek civilization, the influence of Greece can be felt in the institutions. For instance, I have told you in Greece you had direct democracy, where you had a popular assembly of all citizens taking part. Above the assembly you had a council. Now in ancient Rome also you had a popular assembly, and whereas in Greece you had the council, here you had the Senate. So the assembly, the Senate and the councils, these were the institutions which were there in ancient Rome and played a significant part in matters of governance. Then when we are talking of ancient Rome, again you have two periods. One is Republican Rome and other is the Imperial Rome. Republican Rome, when one is talking of Republican Rome, you have these institutions like the assembly, the council and the consuls and the generals, and later on in course of time, because of circumstances, because of, one can say, it is often said, the extravagant of the Roman ruling classes, these institutions were not able to handle the pressures of time, and so you came to the phase of Imperial Rome, that is the monarchy or the king became the dominant institution. This happened around 4th century AD. So BC you are starting with Republican Rome, that is 4th century BC, and by the time you say come to 4th century AD, you had monarchy taking over in Rome, and you have the period of Imperial Rome. One can cite names such as the Roman emperors, say Augustus and Constantine. Now regarding the division of society, I have told you in Greece you had the citizens, the foreigners and the slaves. So now in Rome you had the patricians, the plebeians and the slaves. So if you compare, you will find that in Greece as well as in ancient Rome, slaves were there as one category enjoying no rights. You had the patricians, where you can say the aristocratic class, about 10% of the population. The plebeians constituted the remaining 90%. The patricians, where you can say the dominant class enjoying all the privileges and all. But I may mention here, you should know that the plebeians for a very long time waged a relentless struggle to have the rights to in the same degree that the patricians had, and succeeded also, but still the dominance was of the patricians. Now coming to the contributions, more specifically I have told you about the popular assembly and the Senate. We may not go into details here. What you can note is that the most significant contribution of the Romans in terms of political tradition lies in whatever they have given to us in vis-a-vis the field of law. You may be surprised, or perhaps not too surprised, to know that a good deal of what is called modern jurisprudence, that is literature, practices of the courts, practices engaged in by the judiciary, the code of conduct for the judges, the code of conduct for lawyers, all these can be traced to ancient Rome. So one of the most significant contributions of the ancient Romans in terms of tradition lies in their deliberations over the field of law. Law in ancient Rome, or according to ancient Rome, was both natural and positive. Now, natural law is that basically means laws that the citizens enjoy by virtue of the fact that they are human beings and enjoy certain inalienable rights. So, or what you call natural rights. So, when one is talking of law in the natural domain, one talks of what is there by virtue of being human beings living in accordance with the law of nature. For instance, the right to live. When you are talking of the natural aspect of law, this will come in, the right to breathe. Now, positive law means a law created by an outside agency, in which case it was the state. So, and in fact in Rome there were three sources of law as it evolved over time. One is, I have told you, the natural law itself, that is, you have a right to live, it is a law, nobody can take it away. Then you have what is called the legislative declarations. I have told you there were two institutions in ancient Rome, that is the popular assembly and the senate. So the declarations of the popular assembly and the senate, these were the legislative declarations and they formed a part of law. The third was what the ancient Romans called, that is legislative formulations. The legislative formulations were in ancient Rome you also had the institution of the court of magistrates. So these formulations were originating from the deliberations of the court of magistrates. Now, when one is talking of law, one can mention here the name of Cicero. Some of you might have heard of Cicero in relation to the fact that he is considered one of the greatest orators, that is public speakers, the world has ever known. In fact, in schools and colleges, when you have these what are called elocution contests or declamation contests, often students take up a speech of Cicero in the Roman assembly or the senate as an elocution piece. This is just by an aside, but you must know this. He was a great lawyer. Now his biggest contribution was the development of what is called the Stoic doctrine of law. Basically, the Stoic doctrine of law was that a true law or a true law is one which is based on reason, and reason should be based on what is correct according to the laws of the nature. So this is Cicero's contribution to jurisprudence, that is the Stoic doctrine of law. Now, coming to our discussion of the Roman tradition cannot be complete before a consideration of the church. Now, what happened was, in course of time, it so happened that in the ancient Roman civilization, there was a division of authority, in the sense that the affairs of the state, or what are called temporal affairs, they came to be looked after by the church, and the affairs of spirituality and other matters, the church became the sole authority. So there was a division of authority. Why I am mentioning this is that this is actually the genesis of the concept of secularism, which later emerged in the 15th and the 16th century, where it happened that the church became very powerful and it was felt that the church and the state should be separate. Now, this is, I am telling you about the 16th century, but you can trace its origin to the ancient Rome, where the church came to acquire a big hold. Though the authority of the king was separate, but even he would often take the name of the god. For instance, the Roman Emperor Constantine in 4th century AD, he embraced Christianity on the ground. I have told you that the Romans believed in the concept of a universal state for a universal community. Now, universal community, though heterogeneous in terms of race, if it had to be drawn together, there had to be something which binded it. So this common glue came to be religion in the form of Christianity. So now, coming to their achievements and failures, as I have already told you, the achievement of ancient Romans, one is the idea of a universal state for a universal community. Second is whatever they contributed in the field of law. And also, the Roman civilization or the Roman traditions can be taken as a bridge between the ancient Greek civilization and the Christian tradition that developed later. Now, regarding the shortcomings, as we mentioned in the case of Greece, in ancient Rome also, a huge section of population, that is the slaves, did not enjoy any rights and nothing was done about it. So this is a blot on the ancient Greece as well as the ancient Roman civilizations. Now I'll just sum up, since we are, I think, almost coming to the end. The topic of our discussion today was political traditions, Greek and Roman. This is a part of block 2 of a new elective course in political theory at the bachelor's degree program. That is the course code you may be knowing, EPS 11. Title is Political Ideas and Ideologies. In that course, block 2 is on political traditions. At the outset I mentioned there are 5 traditions listed in the block. Indian, Confucian, that is ancient China, Arab, Islamic, Greek, Roman and Western, that is liberal and Marxism. Indian has been covered already in an earlier teleconferencing session. Today I covered the Greek and the Roman tradition, and I hope to cover the other traditions in the subsequent teleconferencing sessions that we would be having. I hope you have got at least some idea of the contribution of ancient Greeks and Romans to political traditions, and in fact have also understood as to what we mean by political traditions. Having said that, I would like to say goodbye to you and to this, of course, I did not mention it. The presentation was unscheduled in the sense that one of our colleagues was to do another session which was on Indian foreign policy but could not be done, and so this was a sort of unscheduled presentation. But anyway, I hope I have not disappointed you too much. You would have definitely got something, and in a subsequent sessions whenever we are having, I would try to take up the other traditions also. Thank you.